I was having a tense conversation with someone that I was close to years ago. The conversation quickly devolved into a passive-aggressive fight that ended with the other person getting in the car and driving away. As I started heading back inside, the other person came back, got out of the car and started our conversation again. The tone of voice was totally different and the stance was different, and the feeling in the air was completely off. I don't know how else to explain it. As the conversation progressed, the other person started saying some nasty and mean things that were completely out of character. I said, "This isn't like you, person." They said, "What makes you think that I'm person?" I remember continuing the conversation and talking to the person for a long time, but I don't remember anything specific. I do remember becoming more and more alarmed and knowing something wasn't right. Finally, I told the person to go home. They complied and left. I went back inside and started telling my sibling about the situation. When the doorbell rang, maybe 2 to 3 minutes had passed. It was the person coming back to apologize for the original fight. They'd been driving around town for a long time and didn't want to go home, leaving things unresolved. I asked why they had said some of the things from the last conversation, and they looked at me like I was crazy. They had no idea what I was talking about, totally could have been lying, but that whole situation just felt dark, scared the hell out of me. I shared a room with a guy in college who was a musician. He'd stay out late almost every night and come home around 3 or 4 in the morning. Our room was a straight shot through kitchen from the front door. One night I woke up to the bedroom door opening and figured it was just my roommate coming home after a gig. I thought it was strange that he turned the light on when coming in. He knew I was a light sleeper and would normally use his phone's light to shine around the room if he was looking for something while I was asleep. My bed was twin-sized, positioned against the wall connecting the bedroom to the kitchen. When he came in, I was facing the wall. I kept my eyes closed and pretended I was still asleep because I didn't feel like having the conversation with a most likely drunken friend. While I was still half asleep, I heard him go to his side of the room opposite of my bed and rustle around his desk and dresser, looking for something. Sometimes he would grab some clothes for the next day and go stay at a buddy's house, so I wasn't concerned. Then I felt him start reaching under my bed. I kept a few things under there, but he would normally ask before straight up taking anything of mine. At that point, I was really confused and annoyed by all this, so I made it a point to passive-aggressively roll over on my other side and face the middle of the room and the direction from where he was reaching, so he knew I was pissed that he was ruining my beauty sleep. Then I heard nothing, but I could feel. He shot up from under the bed and was just standing there. I never opened my eyes, but I figured he would either apologize for waking me up or something. But he never said a word. He just stood there after probably 2 minutes with the light still on. I heard him leave the room and go to the kitchen. I opened my eyes after a couple more minutes because he left the light on in the bedroom. He wasn't in the kitchen, but he had pulled a knife from the knife block and left it on the table. I checked around the house and couldn't find him, but quickly realized my Xbox book bag, wallet, etc. was stolen. I called my roommate to see if he had been home, but he was miles away at a party. He still had his house keys and never gave them to anyone else. Prior, I must have accidentally left the door unlocked that evening, which was the one time someone decided to check the knob, but police never followed up with me after that night, so I doubt they ever caught the guy. I can't imagine what would have happened if I ever did open my eyes and see that guy standing there, or if I chased him out to the kitchen. When I was in 6th grade, my friend was over my house and we were taking turns playing the PlayStation. I was lying on my bed as it was his turn. The lights were out and it was about midnight at this time. As I'm laying there, I notice from my left peripheral that there is someone there. I see a face, all white face with blacked out eyes and quite similar to what Michael Myers' mask looks like, but no hair. This face started to slowly turn in and look at me getting closer and closer. I jumped up quickly and turned the light on, and then there was nothing. I was freaked out for the rest of that night. A few years later, I believe I was in high school. I was playing Xbox and my mum was sitting on the computer. I was playing cards, zombies, and she was playing a dice game. So I can be certain this wasn't from that. Both of us heard this very loud man say, "I'm who?" "Me." So I'm home but dragged out. We both just looked at each other, wondering what the hell just happened. Later that night, my mum was in her room just petting one of our cats. As she was petting him, she was just saying, "Hi, Vardy. His name is Vader." After she said this, she said that someone mimicked back to her. He almost as if she was being mocked. A few months later, once Halloween approached, we had seen something else. We had our house all decorated and it looked pretty scary. Scary enough that I decided to use my uncle's camera to take a picture of our house. Upon further inspection of the picture, I noticed something quite scary. I zoomed in on our door. We have a glass door that opens first before the main door, and so within the glass of face it had human characteristics. However, the eyes were blacked out, very similar to the thing I saw when I was younger. I lived in an old house converted into a duplex in Athens, Ohio, which is reported to be one of the most haunted American cities. During the first year, I lived in my apartment. I frequently noticed this strange music that seemed to be coming from inside the house. It's hard to describe, but it sounded like a keyboard or an organ. It sounded faint and was played in the minor key. Always sounded the same regardless. I just chalked it up to my downstairs neighbors, and it never bothered me enough to investigate. It was definitely coming from inside our building. The following year, my original neighbors moved out, and my new neighbor Sarah moved in. We became friends. One night she was hanging out in my apartment, and the music started up. She asked me pointedly where the music was coming from, and I said, I didn't know she didn't have music playing in her apartment. She said no, and we both looked at each other uneasily. Sarah asked me if I ever saw or heard weird things, and I said that other than the music, I hadn't. The way she asked implied that she had, but she didn't want to talk about it. A few months later, her BF moved in, and she later confided in me that she saw and heard things, specifically random 10 drills of what looked like smoke swirling inside their bedroom, doors slamming or opening without explanation. Her boyfriend hated going to the basement so much that he'd sing the whole time he was down there to do laundry. I hated the basement too, because it hadn't been changed much since the house had been built, and there was a creepy room that looked like where you'd keep a sex slave. I guess it was where wood would have been stored. I always felt like I was being watched when I was down there. I graduated and was getting ready to move. I went out of town for a few days, so my parents were watching my cat at their place, a few hours away. The night I got back to Athens, I decided to start packing some of my books. The first items I'd packed. I fell asleep and woke up in the middle of the night to a giant crash. I was tired and disoriented, so I assumed the noise came from Sarah's place. The next morning, I went to my living room to find that a giant antique mirror hanging over my fireplace had crashed and shattered into hundreds of pieces. The nails supporting the mirror were intact, still in the wall. After that, I was finally prepared to admit that the place was haunted. I know Sarah saw and heard way more than she ever admitted, but she didn't like talking about it because she still lived there. She moved recently, so maybe I'll get more out of her now. I never really believed in ghosts, but too many unexplainable things happened. I never felt unsafe, or like whatever was in the house wanted to hurt me or express anger. Except maybe at my moving, this story isn't even that interesting. But that's how I found a lot of people's ghost stories to be. Not everyone has some vindictive poltergeist or whatever. I did do some cursory research into who owned the house. I learned a woman was the original owner. Back then, the house was for a single family. She sounded like a quiet woman, a widow who died at an old age. In her obituary, I learned she loved to play music and had founded the Athens Music Appreciation Group. I wonder if I kept hearing her favorite song to play.